what we have so far is all well and good. So we've got an x-axis that's nicely labeled, easy to read, a y-axis that is nicely labeled and easy to read. However, we have no context for these numbers. From 0 to 500. I mean, is this data in units of bananas or elephants or feet or light years or number of pairs of shoes owned? What does 0 to 500 mean? And what does 0 to 450 mean? So what we desperately need is we need these axis titles here, both for the horizontal axis and for the vertical axis. So let's add those. So again, if you haven't done so, make sure that the chart is selected, and you can go to chart design and go to add chart element. And here you've got axis titles. So we can add a primary horizontal axis title. So you can see it added it here. And this is probably a good time to stop and go ahead and change the font size. So we can come back up here to home. And under home, we can change the font. So we want to use the same font as the axis label, so Times New Roman. And you usually want the title, the axis title, to be larger than the labels. So down here, we use 16 point. So we're going to want to use a font size that's greater than 16 point, maybe 18 or 20. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose 18 because that's larger, and make it bold. And again, make sure that it's black. All right. And now we can just double click. So left double click. And we should be able to call that whatever we want. So this data, I know the x-axis data is the drop height of a roller coaster, and that is in feet. So make sure that you always include the units in parentheses next to the axis title down here. Because without that, we don't know if it's in feet, if it's in inches, light years, pounds, who knows? So just make sure you always include the units there. So next, let's do the same thing with the vertical axis. So we'll come up here to chart design, go to add chart element, go to axis titles, and put primary vertical. And you'll notice it added one here. So it's currently selected. So I'm just going to go to home and change the font to Times New Roman. I chose 18 point, and I want it bold, and I want to make sure it is black, just like that. Now I can double click on it and select that to replace it. And this axis is related to the vertical height of a roller coaster in feet, like that. Now, this title does look like it's a little close to these axis labels. So what you can do is when you put your cursor over the edge of the title, notice how the cursor changes from maybe a text cursor to a movement cursor, where it's got the left and right arrows. So if I hold the left mouse button down, I can now drag that a little bit to the left. And now it feels like there's a little bit of a gap, a little bit of separation from the axis labels here. And that looks much nicer. Okay, that looks good.